Hello, it is time for Ask Allison. So I had an awesome question about somebody, and I hear this a lot, I see it in the Facebook group a lot, people who are currently working in jobs that provide for federal loan repayment, and whether or not it makes sense to complete that for the 10 years that it requires in order to get your student loan repaid, or whether it makes sense to go into private practice. So I want to talk a little bit about, I'm not even going to call it research that I've done, but like some podcasts that I've listened to, some articles that I've read, and I'm going to link to a podcast in this caption and also in the show notes for the podcast. But from what I understand, as of last fall, 99% of the people who applied for student loan repayment after doing their 10 years were denied. There's a big whistleblower situation. I don't know if it's going to get better, but that's what we're looking at. So people committed 10 years to public service, maybe put some private practice dreams on hold, and it's not getting repaid because I's weren't dotted or T's weren't crossed, and it doesn't look like that's reversible. So I want you to do some research there if you were putting things on hold for private practice until then. But for now, I want to do math, which is hard when it's not visual. I'm not going to scroll it on the screen, but I'm going to try to explain it as clearly as I can. Let's say you're working in a publicly funded agency making $40,000 before taxes a year. You're working 40 plus hours a week, and maybe you have $40,000 in student loans. I want you to do this math with your own particulars, but those feel like kind of average-ish numbers from what I hear. So over the course of 10 years, those 10 years that you're waiting for student loan repayment to hopefully kick in at the end of it, you're going to make $400,000. If you're very lucky, you're not going to have to pay off those student loans. So you've made a total of $400,000 before taxes. Let's look at that in private practice. The same 10 years, making about $100,000 a year, working about 25 hours a week. So in 10 years, you'll have made $1 million. And that's without expenses. So let's say your expenses are about 25% of your income. That's going to bring you down to $800,000. Now, I would be willing to pay $40,000 out of pocket for twice the pre-tax expense. But being self-employed means you are going to have, sorry, I've got notes because this is a lot of math. Being self-employed means you're going to have a higher tax rate. And this is where being an S-Corp is really important for those of us who are making a higher amount of income. Talk to your accountant about it. Most that I hear say, mine says 25 grand or more a year, but I've heard other people in more expensive cities, for instance, or maybe higher tax brackets, I'm not sure, say 80 grand. But still, if you're in that 100 grand, it makes sense probably to be an S-Corp, talk to a professional. What you're going to be paying over the taxes you would be paying as a W-2 employee, as a self-employed person, is probably going to be about $7,500 more per year. So over 10 years, that's $75,000. So that's going to bring that kind of pre-W-2 tax income down to $725,000. Even if your tax rate is higher than that, and again, not an accountant, not trying to be an accountant, but even if your tax rate is higher, I promise you it's not going to be the $325,000 difference. So in my mind, it makes sense to go after what you want if you're wanting to be in private practice now for a number of reasons. The least of which, honestly, is the fact that these student loan repayments aren't actually happening for the vast majority of people. So this is not a conversation I like to tell people. It's not a conversation I like to have with people who may be 8 years in. And it is not up to me to tell you whether to quit or whether to stay. But I want you to have the information. I want you to math it out yourself. And that way you can make a more educated decision. I hope that helps and isn't too depressing for some of you. Yeah, the more you know, there's the rainbow.